In this video, you will see what is the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 7.5. Every units in this video are all obtainable. I do want to know, what do you think is the best unit in Anime Vanguards Update 7.5? Remember to subscribe and like. And with that being said, in no particular order, the first must-have unit is Monkey King Awakened. Jinwoo is the newest Wordlands unit, and he is one of the strongest with his unique passive and ability. Monkey King Awakened stats a max upgrade and max level are 80,860 damage with his SP at 5.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 13,658, which is insanely meta. Jinwoo gets an ability at max upgrade called Monkey King's Fu. This unit can choose to place a clone of itself anywhere on the map. This clone starts at upgrade 0 and clone cannot be sold when this unit is, and costs 50% less than the original or the last clone place. Jinwoo's first passive, the power of all races. For anything that requires a group or category, this unit is counted as that group or category. Gains 10% damage buff for each different group on your team. His second passive, Monkey King Clone. For every clones created, this unit gains 50% damage and 5% more range. Anytime this unit is sold, all clones gains any buffs this unit had for X amount of seconds, and this unit cannot be placed again. Its third passive, Soul Strike. This unit ignores 80% of damage reduction for every percentage of damage reduction an enemy has. This unit amplifies its damage by that amount. Alright, next unit is Eizen Aura. Eizen is one of the best secret, with him being immune to all status ailments as he becomes fully AoE and gets an ability at later upgrades. Eizen Aura stats a max upgrade and max level are 52,390 damage with his SP at 10 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,226, which is insanely good, especially he becomes fully AoE at later upgrades. Eizen Aura's first passive, Aura. He will be immune to all status ailments. Every enemy within 40% of this unit's range takes DOT damage, scaling from 1% to 80% of this unit's damage based on how close they are to this unit. His second passive, Complete Hypnosis. Anytime a health stock is removed, forces every enemy on the map to walk backwards for 5 seconds and lessens his SPA by 5% SPA per health stock missing. And his third passive, Dabo Mastery. Gains active Dabo 81. Every enemy stopped by Dabo 81 increases the damage conversion of Aura by an additional of 2% of the duration of the ability. Okay, next unit is Yamamoto Captain. Yamamoto is one of the best summoners with his frequent summons as he inflicts burn to enemies. Yamamoto Captain stats a max upgrade and max level are 30,760 damage with his SP at 10.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,008, which is insanely overpowered, especially he becomes fully AoE at later upgrades. Yamamoto Captain's first passive, Head Captain. Attacks will inflict burn for 25% damage, and his damage will increase by 10% and lessens his SPA by 2% for every burning enemy in this unit's range up to 30%. His second passive, South. Every enemy this unit kills gets revived as a skeleton with his health being 40% of this unit's attack, making Monarch the best trait as it will scale with traits. His third passive, Release, gains an ability where enemy that walks into this unit's range will be inflicted with burn every 15 seconds, and it will increase the damage of burn applied to the same enemy by this unit by 1% every time it is applied. When activating North, all skeletons summoned on the map will stop moving, and it is a global cooldown. Alright, next one is Lord of Shadows. Sid is still one of the best secret with his passive and ability. Lord of Shadows stats a max upgrade and max level and max buff are 57,650 damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 8,133. Lord of Shadows' first passive, Dramatic Entry. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once gauge is filled up, this unit can then press the unlock active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damages all enemies in range by 150% of this unit's damage and buffs range by 30% for 30 seconds. Its second passive, Lord of Shadows. Whenever this unit gets a takedown on an enemy, gains plus 0.5% damage up to 100% and more range by 0.25% up to 50%. And this buff are lost on swap. His last passive, Overpower. This unit is immune to debuffs, increases damage dealt to the enemy based on the percentage of their missing HP. Lord of Shadows, at later upgrades, gets an ability All Range Atomic. When activating, it will deal 50% X of the amount of swaps this unit has done in damages to all enemies in range, which resets on use. This has a global cooldown of 180 seconds. Okay, next unit is Escanor Pride. Escanor is the newest Vanguard unit obtained only from the summer event banner, and he became one of the strongest Vanguard with his passive and abilities. Escanor Pride stats a max upgrade, max buff, and max level are 1.19 million damage with his SP at 7.1 seconds, making his damage per second at 166,855, which is insanely meta. Escanor's first ability, Lion Sin, when activated, Escanor will deal 400% damage to every enemy in range and can only be used once per match per player. Escanor's second ability, Ultimate, when activated, he sets himself to 12-hour stack and gains 50% damage and can no longer lose hour stacks, although after 5 waves, this unit sells itself but can be placed again. Escanor's first passive, the one above all. Once the pre-match screen, the player can select to burn unit slots. For every slot that is burned or empty slot, permanently gain 1 hour stack. If all slots are burned or you have no other units equipped, this unit will upgrade itself every wave and becomes free to place. His second passive, High Noon, for every wave that passes, this unit gains 1 hour stack. For every hour stack, this unit gains 15% damage and 1.5% range, while at 12 stacks, this unit gains 30% more damage and all enemies in range get inflicted with burn for 2% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. Once hitting 12 stacks, every wave lowers stack count by 1. His last passive, Sunshine, attacks inflict burn for 30% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. If an enemy leaves this unit's range, this unit will inflict that enemy with burn for 100% of this unit's damage for 5 seconds. Anytime this unit inflicts burn on an enemy, cleanses all debuffs and status effects from itself. Alright, next one is Leo Fangs. Leo is the newest secret unit only obtained through a special quest, and she became one of the strongest secret with her passive and ability in this new anime Vanguards update 7.5. Leo Fangs stats a max upgrade and max level are 90,000 damage with her SP at 9 seconds, making her damage per second at 10,045. Leo gets an ability on placement, which is Hellfire Incinerate. When activated, while form is active, gain 1% damage buff per second while an enemy is in range. Every attack on this form reduces range by 2%. This debuff cannot be cleansed. Stats buffs and debuffs revert once ability is turned off. Leo's first passive, Grand Fire Mage, attacks inflict burn for 20% of this unit's damage stat for 5 seconds. Anytime this unit applies burn to an enemy it already attacked, the percentage of the burn applied increases by 5%. Leo's second passive, Show Me Your Full Power, for every burning enemy in range, increases range by 0.5% up to 20%. When attacking a burning enemy, does 20% more damage. Okay, next is Vegeta Angel. Vegeta is one of the transformation from Goku Super 3, and he is one of the best with his insane stats at later upgrades. Vegeta Angel stats a max upgrade and max level are 147,780 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 22,832. Vegeta's first passive, Hope of the Universe. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 25%. When this gauge is filled, this unit can swap to its counterpart. Vegeta's second passive, The Villain Arrives. His SPA lessens by 30% on entry after swapping for 40 seconds. When this unit swaps in, slows all enemies in its radius by 40% for 10 seconds. Vegeta's last passive, The Prince of Pride. Every time this unit attacks, it gains 2% more damage up to 40%. This value carries over between swaps and fusion permanently. Alright, next unit is Goku Super 3. Goku is one of the strongest with his passive and stats at later upgrades. Goku Super 3 stats a max upgrade and max level are 105,560 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 16,380. Goku's first passive, Hope of the Universe. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 25%, and when this gauge is filled, this unit can swap to its counterpart. His second passive, The Hero Arrives. His damage increases by 50% on entry after swapping for 40 seconds. When this unit swaps in, it stuns all the enemies in its radius for 2 seconds. His last passive, here it comes. If no enemy is in range, this unit starts gaining damage and range at a rate of 1% per second up to 100%. Once this unit attacks, this value resets to 0. Okay, next unit is Sung Jinwoo and Agros. Sung Jinwoo is one of the best Vanguard with its insane passives, summons, and nukes. Sung Jinwoo and Agros stats are max upgrade and max LR, 232,630 damage with his SP at 6.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 36,303, which is insanely meta. Sung Jinwoo and Agros have 3 passives. His first passive, the Army Supply. This unit has a mana bar. Anytime this unit spawns a summon, this unit will lose 30% of its total mana, and anytime an enemy is defeated, this unit gains 2% of their total mana. And anytime a mana is lost, his damage will be buffed by 0.5% up to 30%. His second passive, the General. Anytime an allied summon dies in this unit's range, increases the damage by 5% up to 50%. This increases is reset after this unit attacks. If none of these units summoned are on the track, this unit will gain 20% more range and 30% more damage. His third passive, the Monarch. This unit summons gain additional health based on the percentage of mana remaining after their summoning. Between upgrades, Sung Jin will be able to nuke enemies with his 3 abilities, although it is only one time use per game, which you will have to use wisely. And between upgrades, Sung Jinwoo, you will be able to manually summon 4 different summons, which are all insanely overpowered, and you can summon them again when they are dead. Alright, next one is Smith John. Sid is one of the strongest with his passives and nuke abilities. Smith John stats are max upgrade and max LR, 24,020 damage with his SP at 4.4 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,522. Smith John first passive dramatic entry. This unit gains a gauge. On attack, the gauge fills up by 12.5%. Once this gauge is filled up, this unit can then press the unlock active ability to swap to its counterpart. On entry, damages all enemies in range by 80% of this unit's damage and buffs damage by 40% for 30 seconds. The second passive, Undercover Agent, gains the unknown element. On attack, if this unit has already attacked that enemy, it increases the damage of that attack by 5%, and it stacks, which is insanely meta against bosses. His last passive, A Welcome Challenge. If the enemy has more health than this unit's damage, this unit will deal 40% more damage. Okay, next unit is Yhwach Almighty. Yhwach is one of the best secret unit with his passives as he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Yhwach Almighty stats are max upgrade and max LR, 28,120 damage with his SPA at 9.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 3,056, which is great, especially he becomes full AoE at later upgrades. Yhwach Almighty has 3 passives. His first passive, the Almighty. The Almighty is immune to all status ailments, increases his damage by 5% for every status ailment avoided up to 30%. His second passive, the Man Who Saw the Future. When this unit attacks, it will do an additional attack on the last enemy in range. At the same time, this will only apply if the first and the last enemy are different. His third passive, Ash Fallen, gains an active ability which increases his range by 5% every time Ash Fallen is used up to 20%. When activating the ability, it switches between 2 toggles. Toggle 1 buffs all units in range by 15% and damage and lose 30% attack from this unit, although his toggle 2 will debuff all allied units in range by 20% damage and 10% range and gain 10% damage and 5% range per allied unit who is debuffed from this ability. How to get Yhwach is from the Rift, where he is a 2% chance to get, so good luck on who is grinding this unit. Alright, next one is Quetzalcoatl Sun God. Quetzal is one of the newest exclusive banner unit, and she became one of the best exclusive with her stats and passives in this new anime Vanguards update 7.5. Quetzal's stats are max upgrade and max LR, 120,700 damage with her SP at 6.7 seconds, making her damage per second at 18,144. Quetzal's first passive, Lover of Humanity. This unit attacks inflict burn for 30% of this unit's damage over 5 seconds and buffs all fire allies in range by 20% damage. Her second passive, the Sun God. This unit always attack in a fixed cycle. Attack 2, then attack 3, then 4. gaining 50% stacking damage each time it uses a new attack, but the bonus resets when the cycle repeats back to its Act 2. Okay, next one is Kaguya Unsealed. Kaguya is one of the best Vanguard units you can obtain through the Spring Event banner in Anime Vanguards Update 7.5. Kaguya Unsealed stats a max upgrade and max level R, 257,820 damage with her SP at 6.4 seconds, making her damage per second at 40,324. Kaguya's first passive, Master of Dimensions. When this unit activates a new dimension, increases her damage by 20% and range by 10%. Kaguya's second passive, God of Shinobi. If an ally in range has a meter, this unit attacks restore that meter by 2% per attack. On attack, Kaguya teleports to the nearest applicable location of the attack. This is disabled when a dimension is activated. When dimension is activated, attack the first enemy and move to them regardless of their spot on the map. Kaguya's third passive, Elemental Affinity. This unit is counted as each element currently on the team. When this unit swaps to its dimension, it matches an element already applied to this unit, and Kaguya will gain 50% more damage for the duration of the domain. Kaguya's first ability, Elemental Dimension, which you can swap her element between fire, ice, and sand. Kaguya's second ability, Beast Explosion. When activated, it will deal 1000% damage to every enemy and can only be used once per match per player. Alright, next one is Super Vegito. Vegito is still one of the best units with his passive and stats at later upgrades. Super Vegito stats a max upgrade and max level R, 234,570 damage with his SP at 3.9 seconds, making his damage per second at 60,668, which is insanely overpowered. Vegeta's first passive, the Strongest Fusion, on entry gains 100% more damage for 40 seconds, and once 40 seconds have elapsed, gains 20% more damage, decreases its SP by 20%, and increases his range by 20%. And attacks ignore enemy dodge chance. His second passive, Alright, if an enemy would attack an ally, it attacks this unit instead. Anytime this unit is attacked, it increases range by 3% up to 30%. His attack also inflict Rupture, which permanently removes regen, making him great against regen enemies. His third passive, Enough. Attacks will ignore 50% of enemy damage reduction. Anytime an enemy attacks or applies a status effect on this unit, it will perform a counterattack on that enemy. Finally, the last unit is Newsman Forecast. Newsman is one of the newest exclusive summer banner unit added, and he became one of the best support in this new Anime Vanguards Update 7.5. Newsman Forecast stats a max upgrade and max level R, 34,870 damage with his SP at 6.2 seconds, making his damage per second at 5,603. Newsman Forecast first passive, The Weather. When this unit attacks an enemy, spawns in thunderclouds on the ground around where the enemy was attacked. These clouds linger for 10 seconds. Any enemy that passes through these clouds are burned for 40% of this unit's damage for 6 seconds. The Snail. Anytime this unit attacks a non-boss enemy, turn that enemy into snail, slowing by 50% for 30 seconds. Anytime this unit damages an enemy, inflict Bubble, and Bubble makes the next attack hitting the enemy deals 30% more damage. That was everything for this video on the top 10 must-have units in Anime Vanguards Update 7.5. I hope this video helped you in some sort of way. Remember to subscribe and like, and I will see you in my next one.